Series, an online initiative where we discuss ideas, where we discuss possibilities, where we discuss the thing beyond the obvious. We do not discuss things which are very naturally coming to you. We do not discuss things which are known to you. We try to challenge your mind. We try to unlock your mind to see the possibilities that are existing in the world. The world is full of possibilities. The thing is that we see up till the fence, but what we require is to think beyond the fence. There's so many things that is existing if we think differently. The idea of this whole Mind Sparkle series is to sparkle your mind, to think something which is not being thought about. So continuing with this tradition, today we have a specific lecture on how to actually think. There is a concept called fluid thinking, and I think most of you may not be knowing, but this is a very new theme which has come into the psychology of thinking. I am also a student who believes that thinking makes a man. I exist because I think. There is a famous saying which says that if you think, you exist, otherwise you cease to exist. That has a very metaphorical and metaphysical meaning to what this concept of thinking is. And continuing with that tradition of challenging your mind, there's a concept of fluid thinking. Just like the water flows and takes the shape of everything where it is goes. And I remember reading somewhere, I don't know how far it is true, but on social media I read about Bruce Lee. He talks about like being a water. Wherever you are, be like a water so that you can accommodate yourself to in any circumstances. So without going deep into what this fluid thinking, that I leave to the expert. And today we have a well-known expert in the fluid thinking, and actually it is he who wrote a beautiful book called Fluid Thinking. This concept of fluid thinking has totally changed the way we look at the concept of thinking and building our societies. And believe me, he is not only talking about making your child successful or you being successful. He's talking about a very comprehensive and holistic idea of making societies and civilization prosper, to think beyond things which are not seen generally. So he wants a notch level. He wants the societies to think beyond what they are thinking now. So Mr. Ashish Jaiswal is a PhD in educational philosophy, educational matters, and everything related to educational thinking. He's from Oxford University, University of Oxford, UK. So he has very well expertise and he has all the credentials to talk on the concept of education, thinking, and how this combo of education and thinking and host of other relevant associated things can push you, push us, and society and the civilization to a forward level. So today we are lucky to invite him to give this session a spotlight by talking about fluid thinking and how this works, how it works for you. Believe me, if you think that it's not good for your competitive exam or you're trying for some exams, I tell you, mind is a big storehouse of possibilities. You never know that how fluid thinking can help you in taking decisions, how thinking can make you win from circumstances which you cannot imagine even exist. And I need not tell you the possibilities that existed 1 week back, 1 month back, 1 year back in a certain country, and the possibility that has existed now. Things which were not even imaginable that a person can win has already won. So there are possibilities that is existing, never related directly to something. Fluid thinking is way beyond your career. It is a way of life, how you live your life and how you succeed. So I invite Mr. Ashish Jaiswal to take over this session and illuminate us on this concept of fluid thinking and how we can go a notch above our individual self to the societal level. Mr. Ashish Joshi, the platform is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Qasim sir. This was very generous introduction. And I hope I'm audible and I'm clear in my voice. Is it all right? Okay. So as you rightly mentioned, I think that you bang on in terms of um how far-reaching is fluid thinking, and especially when I conceived this topic, that it has been an engine or a cornerstone of advanced societies. It was essentially to keep in mind the future leaders and those who may be leading the societies, that how they, being fluid thinkers, can shape societies its advancement, and even in their roles as administrators, how they can be one notch higher than their counterparts. So it's a very important concept. And today I would like, I would shed light on it as much as possible in these 25 minutes. I would be happy if people can ask, share their views on chat, because otherwise, usually I like to interact. So I would like to open up with a very simple question, and if people can just think in their minds and decide who they are. So I just like to kind of post a question, which is, do you think that you're a right brain or a left brain? Or do you think that you are more creative, or do you think that you are a more logical person? Uh, Most of us, as we have kind of been in the past few years, we have been kind of told that, or we sometimes sense that we are creative people or we are artists, and sometimes we think that we are logical, rationalist, and we are strong in analytical skills. And this is how we try to kind of think about ourselves. So in case if you have some kind of attribute or a label for yourself, whether you're a right brainer or a left brainer, it will really help all of us to arrive at a rich discussion. So that's the first question I just place in front of you. And in case if you want to leave your answers, whether you're right brain or a left brainer, in the chat screen, that would be wonderful. Uh, Now, how the session will flow is I would start with what is fluid thinking, who's a fluid thinker, and why fluid thinking is essential most attribute or a frame of mind for a learner, especially in the times when our societies are complex and we are looking at a world which is seeing a watershed era in technology. So our societies have reached to a level where I think that fluid thinking has become almost compulsory. So I'll start with what exactly fluid thinking is not. And for that, I would like your attention. So there's an answer from Nasreen which says, I use both sides depending on uh, situations. Fantastic. So, so what is fluid thinking not? So, if you look at our education system currently, and mostly around the world as well, we are told, and we obviously understand that we need to become specialists. And this is a very obvious pursuit of education right now. When we are in schools, we are asked that either we want to become doctors or engineers or MBAs, and then sometimes students start preparing for their exams at in the year 6, year 7, and preparing for IITs. And in that, there is one very specific thing which happens and which gets carried on throughout our lives. And I call it island centric view. Now, what is island centric view? It is like, the way we have conceptualized our educational system right now is that each of the disciplinary cohort is like an island. So, for example, in your island, you are focusing on physics, chemistry, maths. Somebody else is focusing on his island in terms of medicine. The investment bankers or the businessmen or entrepreneurs are focusing on their island. Now, we all are on our individual islands. We are forced to get on these individual islands. As V. Ramakrishnan, who got a Nobel Prize in 2009, says that right now we are asking our children to choose our disciplines very early. So it's a thing which is even identified by people like who are at the helm of their specialization, that we are kind of getting into this disciplinary islands very early. And when we are on these disciplinary islands, our worldview, our biases, the way we look at the world is all how our island shapes our thinking. So we think that the world is being run as through our profession is at the top, and we start mingling among our own crowd only. So you will see that doctors having their networks among doctors, engineers among engineers, and investment bankers talking in that language. And this is essentially a result of the way we have stacked our disciplines, uh, because of the education system right now. This is the idea of specialization in our minds. But there have been few people throughout the century, in the history of our civilization, who have refused to stay on one island. They have created their boats. They are free to travel from one island to another island. They don't fear experimentation, failure, and they want to collect knowledge from all the disciplines. These are wanderers. They want to challenge the worldview, the biases, and these wanderers essentially are the ones who have shaped human history. They are the ones, if we look at their educational journeys, we, we can derive a pattern out of it, whether we call them geniuses or whether we call them contributors. We can derive a pattern out of it, and I name that pattern as fluid thinking because that's essentially what their thinking can be called. And in order to explain, I just want to read a quote before I proceed further, and that's from my book. And I hope if someone can identify who wrote this, that will be wonderful. So here is a letter written by a gentleman to a sultan, and it's a letter which says that he wants to build a bridge, and he says that I, your faithful servant, understand that it has been your intention to erect a bridge from Galata to Istanbul across the Golden Horn. But this has not been done because there were no experts available. I, your subject, have determined how to build the bridge. It will be a masonry bridge as high as a building, and even tall ships will be able to sail under it. So it's a letter, extract of a letter written by a gentleman to a sultan. And it'll be lovely if anyone of you can, oh, fantastic. Beautiful. Yes. So that's the right answer. But this is very surprising for a lot of people, that how someone like a Leonardo da Vinci, who created Mona Lisa or is known for his painting Mona Lisa, is writing a letter to a sultan, and this letter is almost sounding like an advertising pitch or like a work pitch. So in this letter, he's not only acting as an engineer, as an expert who can erect a bridge, but also he's pitching for his work. So there are so many aspects of his mind which are visible through this extract, which breaks the myth of whether Leonardo was an artist, whether Leonardo was a scientist, whether Leonardo was an entrepreneur, who Leonardo was. Was he carrying any of these labels, or the label of a specialist as we understand? So this is one of the examples of a fluid mind, and the reason for Leonardo's you know refusal of taking on these labels is because he was trained in a particular way. He wasn't isolated in terms of disciplines in his initial years, and he treaded freely among the subjects. And sometimes people can question back and say that no, because Leonardo was a genius and hence he was able to study every subject freely. But what is emerging out of when we go through the history of these people or their educational journeys is that the reason because they traveled among through the various subjects freely is one of the core reasons why they were able to arrive at an advanced thought. That it was their boldness, it was their journey which into the different subjects which also helped them to arrive at a thought which wasn't thought by uh, the the experts, so to say, of the world of those times. So this is one of the example which I sort of wanted to start with in terms of what a fluid thinking is all about. And the question of on whether we are right brainer or left brainer, the question I ask that because it's a very big myth that our brain is divided into right or a left, or there is a creative or a logical division. And this myth has been so so much ingrained because of social media and pop psychology that we are almost, we those who don't know almost believe that this division is real. In fact, there are so many pictures where we are shown, a logical side and a creative side, but it's a myth. And there's a gentleman, famous gentleman called Neil deGrasse Tyson, an astrophysicist, who has, in fact, busted this myth. And also, he said, "Don't call me left brain, right brain. Call me human. I'm disappointed with some aspects of civilization. I'm not left brain or right brain. I have a brain." So he has, also sort of, he's a big champion of integrating arts and science, and he's one of the advanced minds who talks a lot about fluid thinking, or the way we integrate our subjects. So I think that uh, this understanding of breaking out of our own disciplinary lenses, this understanding where we do not cage ourselves from a specific disciplinary, with a specific disciplinary knowledge, is the cornerstone of fluid thinking. Uh, for example, just a second, uh, another person who I think most of us have heard about is Steve Jobs, and the recent example. Now, Steve Jobs again cannot be classified into as an artist or a scientist or an entrepreneur. And one who has gone through the biography of Steve Jobs and his life journey, it is clear that, when he was growing up, most of his friends, because it was Silicon Valley, and most of the people, friends, his friends were friends with engineers, because that was the major group of friends there. But it was Steve Jobs who had friends, two sets of friends. He was friends with engineers, and he was also friends with people who were from the artistic side, or had artistic bent. And there is enough evidence where it's clear that the journey of iPhone, which Steve Jobs conceptualized, is precisely a combination of science and artistic inputs. And the aesthetics, the linearity, and the technological advancement is not because of a bent of a particular kind, but it is a combination or emergence of science and arts. So this is another example of someone who has kind of contributed to our society, uh, uh, by merging arts, science, and going beyond the disciplinary lens. Now, a question can be asked, that, how relevant is fluid thinking in the current scenario? Here, I would like to take the name of a gentleman called Peter Giddis. Now, Peter Giddis is not so very famous right now, but he was the person who created the first master plan of India. And incidentally, Peter Giddis was not an urban, or so to say, the kind of urban planner we think about these days. He was a sociologist who eventually created an urban plan. So, when we are thinking from the perspective of the kind of roles and jobs which are going to emerge in the future, as most of us will know that in 2013, Oxford came out with a study which said that 47% of the jobs which humans are doing right now may not exist over the next 2 decades. And the kind of jobs which we are doing right now, they will dramatically change in their frame. So if we are if we have to think of that, right now, we have smart cities. So if we have to think that what kind of smart city specialist we need to create, you will be forced or compelled to follow the model of Peter Giddis. And because he proposed that, a model which integrated across technology well-being, sociology, urban planning, environment, and that seem more sophisticated than simply saying that a smart city specialist may obviously be an architect or an engineer. So what that points to is that in the future we have to break through the typical molds of what we think a specialist is, and we'll have to go across the disciplines and gather from each discipline and arrive at a advanced understanding, which is kind of can be explained through the example of a smart city specialist over a mere engineer. I call them, fluid specialists. So our definition of being a specialist need to change, and we need to understand that we need to become fluid specialist in the future. So we are not merely engineers or doctors or businessmen, but we are fluid doctors or fluid engineers or fluid entrepreneurs. And that essentially means that you may have a core specialization, you may have a core area to sit on, but you do not restrict yourself to that disciplinary island. And this is something very important for even societies to understand. And we are talking about, across sectarian, knowledge, wisdom, a society which is not divisive, a mind which is ready to learn, which is ever ready to experiment, which doesn't fear failure, which is not pressurized by the specific journey which is typically in front of us right now, like a formulaic journey that you take this subject, clear this exam, get into this course, and you reach this position. This formulaic journey, when you will arrive at that role, you will may find yourself slightly short in terms of contributing to that role. So if we want our societies, or if we look at the societies of the past which have remained relevant, you would see that the cornerstone was fluid thinking. It was not, it was drawing from across the disciplines and bringing it together into each aspect of well-being. And I think that is something which, on an individual level, if you look at the geniuses, we identify this trait in them. If you look at societies, we identify this framework uh, among the societies. And it's a much deeper concept, and it is one of the I would say pioneering idea in terms of, because right now when we hear of interdisciplinarity, it is mostly from the perspective of what the teachers are doing or what the departments are doing, whereas fluidity is something which is gives the power in your hand to become interdisciplinary by adopting the pattern of thinking how these people think. So you are cautious about your educational journey, your stereotypes, your biases, your discipline centric nature, and you are ever evolving and ever focused on the next step. So that's precisely how I kind of summarize fluid thinking. uh, I think I would probably stop here, and maybe we'll go as we can uh, have questions or interaction.
Yes, Ashish.